Keira Bell was 14 when she decided she was born in the wrong body and was referred for help at the Tavistock Clinic. But she's now taking legal action against the NHS Gender Identity Clinic. The case begins tomorrow. Keira Bell's now 23 and regrets the life-changing hormone treatment for gender reassignment that she was given as a teenager. Well, I've been talking to Paul Conrath, the lawyer in the case, and to Keira Bell herself.
When I was 14, I was going through a lot of problems and, had already been gender non-conforming and dealing with those struggles. So when I came across transsexualism online, it just kind of made sense to me. And, I thought that was me at the time. And so I went through the GP and then on to the CAMS clinic, and they referred me on to the Tavistock clinic. So I saw them when I was 16.
And what kind of treatment were you offered when you went to the Tavistock?
I wasn't really offered any specific treatment. It was basically the affirmation model that they worked by. And so when I came there presenting with, gender dysphoric feelings and my claims of being male or feeling like I should transition, they affirmed that immediately, and there wasn't any in-depth investigation into my history or anything like that. So I was fairly quickly put onto the medical path.
How quickly was that?
So I saw them in January, and by October I had been put on puberty blockers or hormone blockers.
What kind of impact did they have on you?
I basically went through a lot of kind of what would be considered menopausal symptoms. So that was a bad time. I couldn't sleep and my appetite went down and, my bone density decreased. And, I'm sure there are some brain adjustments that happen that haven't been looked at. It was a bad time.
Now, what the Tavistock has said about this is that they don't want to talk about the individual court case, but they say sometimes there's a perception that the service's primary course is to prescribe drugs. When young people first attend the service, we spend time with them and their families and hear how they're doing in general, as well as talking more specifically about their gender. Does that chime with your experience?
No, not at all.
What are your concerns about the long-term impact of the kind of hormone treatment you received?
Well, it's the fact that it puts you on a path that changes your life forever. And, when you are a minor, you have no chance of understanding how that affects you and, your adult life. If we put a stop to this, it will allow people to grow naturally. And, more often than not, adults outgrow their gender dysphoric feelings. So it's preventing unnecessary harm.
And in your case, are there questions about whether you might be able to have children?
That's all up in the air. I have no idea. There's been no tests since to, check.
Let me bring in your solicitor now, Paul Conrath. What's the basis for this case?
Essentially, it's related to informed consent. We say that young people under the age of 18 years old are unable to give informed consent to an experimental medical treatment that has irreversible lifelong consequences.
Now, what the Tavistock has said about their service, this is the Gender Identity Development Service, they say it's a safe and thoughtful service that puts the best interests of its patients and families first. We won't comment on the ongoing proceedings and await the judgment of the court in due course.
Yeah, well, we would dispute that. And I think anyone that has looked in any depth at the research around this area would recognise that it is very, very limited indeed. And Professor Carl Hennigan from Oxford University found, and I quote, "The current evidence base does not support informed decision-making and safe practice in children." And as we've looked into this case and prepared it, that picture emerges time and time again. So we wouldn't agree with that.
And it's not just Keira, is it? You've got another client as well.
Yes, we're representing a mother of a 16-year-old daughter who's on the autistic spectrum. And this young lady is on the waiting list for the Gender Identity Development Service for treatment. And the parent is very concerned that her daughter would be subject to similar treatment that Keira has gone through. And so she's part of the claim.
I'd like to go back to Keira now. And what is it that you hope to come out of this case?
Well, I obviously want to firstly to prevent minors from being prescribed these blockers, which the NHS has only just recently admitted they're experimental, and it will prevent harmful changes to young people's bodies. I want to raise awareness for the system itself, as well as detransitioners, and encourage them to speak out, and also more research into gender dysphoria further along, and eventually to create more robust mental health services, because psychological conditions need psychological treatment. So I think that's important to prevent kids even considering hormone blockers or any sort of medical change.
Keira Bell and earlier Paul Conrath, thank you both.